We're going to start this video on Nikola Tesla's wireless energy. I just call it an antenna. It's wound in a specific way. When you go to videos that I've put in the description, you'll start to be able to do the homework, which is into the podcast. I normally don't do a podcast on YouTube because when YouTube gives me strikes and don't tell me what the strike is for, I take all my videos and stop until that 90 days of that strike ends it. This takes revenue from YouTube when people watch my videos. Now, with that, we want to know, is this wireless energy real or fake? If you watch what I put in the descriptions, you will know if it's real or fake. You will also know that Nikola Tesla his experiments were actually working progress. What do I mean by that? That means they actually worked. And the progress is that he was trying to do it for people around the world, which scientists says it didn't work. But his experiments did work. This is something they've been trying to hide for a long time. So when you start to see the experiments all these other YouTubers are doing, you start to see that Nikola Tesla's work works close, not around the world. This means that you can build a generator and harness this. Now, we build a new device, and we want to show you this device, even though you've seen it before in my other videos, but that's another story. Let's get to the podcast.
We've all studied Nikola Tesla's work for years, sifting through his inventions, his patents, and his ideas. But there's something deeper, something elusive that Tesla didn't quite get the chance to tell us. Secrets buried within his designs. Secrets that only now, with fresh eyes and a fearless mind, can we start to uncover. Tesla once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." And with those powerful words, we begin our journey. Because what if Tesla really did have the key to giving the world free energy? What if everything he tried to tell us wasn't a fantasy, but a reality just beyond our grasp? So why, you ask, didn't his inventions light up the world? Why were they dismissed and forgotten, locked away as impossible? The answer is simpler than you think. They didn't want you to figure it out. But we believe Tesla did give us the answers. We just have to piece them together. Hidden in plain sight within his work, these are the very secrets that have been buried, disguised by time and misunderstanding. But now the time has come to rediscover them. Tonight we'll dive deep into Tesla's world, where conventional electrical engineering rules are set aside and a new realm of possibility emerges. And we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to show you how to start building the very technologies that could have changed the world. But first, a challenge. If you want to unlock the mysteries we're about to reveal, you'll need to do some homework. There are videos and resources we'll provide. If you follow them, you'll begin to grasp more than most people ever will. These principles are over a century old, and yet they defy modern textbooks. So, as we begin to break these concepts down layer by layer, you'll discover how energy, frequency, and vibration are not just abstract ideas, they're the foundation of a new kind of power, a power you can harness. And at the end of this journey, you just might build a generator that rivals anything on the market today. This is more than a podcast, it's an adventure into the unknown where the past meets the future. So get ready, shall we begin? Watch these for your assignment. 1. Full ringer construction disclosure with schematics, and 2. Full ringer construction disclosure with schematics. These titles can be found on YouTube. Alright, let's get into it. Now, if you've watched the videos we assigned, you should already be familiar with the terms and the basic principles behind this design. For those who haven't, don't worry, we'll walk you through it step by step. Just remember, this is a podcast, so you'll need to listen closely and visualize as we describe the process. We're about to flip Tesla's original design on its head while still honoring his foundational principles. The first video I gave you covers Tesla's patents. This is key. It holds the blueprint for the system we're about to build. Let's talk construction. We're starting with an improved ringer circuit built to golden ratio standards for maximum energy efficiency. Now, credits where they're due. We've drawn inspiration from Lasersaber's work on YouTube and others in the community who have tirelessly explored the realm of wireless energy. Remember, Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower might not have worked on the global scale he envisioned, but that doesn't mean the principle behind it was a failure. What we're focusing on here is the why. Why Tesla believed it could work. And even if it wasn't practical for long distances, we've seen remarkable success at shorter ranges. So let's break this down. We're using an input of 0 to 14 volts DC at 0 to 3 amps, self-tuning to the load with a total input of 0 to 24 watts. The heart of the system is constructed on an 8-inch Type 77 met glass laced ferrite rod. Every coil is meticulously measured to 6.472 inches in length. A golden ratio harmonic which gives us unparalleled energy efficiency. This isn't just for aesthetics or theory. It allows for mind-bending wireless power effects, including the appearance of nodal points or energy hotspots where wireless power can be tapped, without draining our source circuit. Imagine being able to wirelessly light an almost unlimited number of separately grounded LED lights without increasing your electrical input. That's the kind of effect we're after. Our L1 coil is wound first. It's 26 Aruban-Florins high-quality enameled magnet wire, wound precisely to 6.472 inches on the ferrite rod. Next comes the L2 coil, also 6.472 inches long, but wound in the opposite direction, bucking the L1. This is crucial. If you don't wind it this way, the system will fail or worse blow up. The L2 is wound with 18 Aruban-Florins wire, thicker than L1 to handle the increased load. Once the coils are in place, we take the high-frequency output of the ringer circuit and feed it into a negative resistance LCR network, heavily grounded to earth. This step is where things get interesting. We're using a network composed of three 30K 5-watt carbon film resistors in parallel, giving us a total resistance of 10K at 15 watts. We also use three 1 nanofarad film capacitors in parallel, giving us a total capacitance of 3 nanofarads. Why carbon film resistors? Because wire-wound ones would detune the system, throwing everything off balance. This setup taps into a very non-linear effect within the system, allowing us to separate cause from effect, much like Eric Dollard theorizes with varying capacitance and inductance over time. We then wind a center-tapped Tesla coil. This is based on Tesla's patent number 336,961 over our L2 coil, making sure both ends of the L3 coil follow the same direction as the L2. This coil measures exactly 6.472 inches, once again aligned with the golden ratio, and features a center tap at 3.236 inches. To wrap this up, we add Stateroot 560 diodes, 6 of them in total, to each phase leg of our L3 coil. We connect the cathodes together to form the positive output, while the center tap of the L3 coil serves as the negative, with no diode attached. We also add a 0.22 UF ceramic capacitor to one side of the L3 coil between the anode and cathode of the diodes. This mimics Don Smith's setup, which used a neon sign transformer and induction coil. What's the result? With this tuned L3 coil, we can wirelessly recharge 12 volts batteries rapidly, allowing you to test and enjoy the system in real time. Once a 12 volts battery is fully charged, you can run 120/240ths of a volt mains inverters. We've even demonstrated its ability to recharge a nearly dead 10Ah 12 volts battery and run 40 to 80 watts of incandescent loads multiple times. The real kicker, over time the output seems to surpass the input drain thanks to the rapid resonant recharge effect. This is just the beginning. Once you understand the principles here, we can start thinking about scaling this up. Shall we continue? Now that we've established the basic principle and those of you who followed the videos have witnessed that wireless energy is real, let's move on to the next step. For those of you who haven't completed the homework, it's not too late, but you'll need to pay close attention now to keep up. Here's the thing. Nikola Tesla was on to something groundbreaking with wireless energy. Maybe it didn't span across the globe as he once dreamed, but that doesn't mean it's irrelevant. Imagine if you could power your home, your car, or even your campsite without wires. This is where we come in. We're going to build a new device inspired by Tesla's patent number 336,961. We're not making jewelry, nor are we using metglass conductors. We're creating something entirely new, a device that amplifies electromagnetic waves and converts them into usable energy. Let's start with Tesla's antenna design. Picture this, a Leyden jar, but Tesla style. We're essentially building a specialized capacitor. Grab a piece of PVC pipe, cut it to a size that's comfortable for you to work with. Before we start winding, we'll place a piece of paper over the PVC to ensure the glue doesn't stick. Then you'll need to wrap the pipe with aluminum foil. Now, I prefer using something thicker, like the aluminum from a pop can. Wrap it tightly, secure it with electrical tape, and now we're ready for the next step, winding Tesla's antenna. You'll wind the wire over the aluminum foil, first to the right, and then flip it, winding to the left until you reach the center tap. If you've done the homework, you know what I'm talking about. For those still catching up, the center tap will have a dial attached to it, and we'll be placing diodes at the ends of the wires to capture the backflow, converting the alternating frequency into DC. Now here's something most people overlook: voltage. Think about voltage as a static charge. It doesn't move on its own, much like static electricity, it just sits there. It's the amperage that makes voltage move. This is crucial. Tesla understood this and stated that frequency, or the act of vibrating something, will generate the amps needed to run any system. That's why we're using an antenna. It captures these vibrating charges of voltage. But how do we charge this capacitor in the first place? You could take it from a battery or even from the atmosphere, but for now, let's focus on the capacitor. Once charged, it doesn't need to be recharged. Why? Because voltage doesn't move, it stays put, making it perfect for our setup. Our Leyden jar capacitor has two layers. The inner layer is the aluminum can wrapped tightly around the PVC, and we've wound Tesla's antenna over this. Then there's the second layer, the negative side of the capacitor. We drill a small hole for the center tap, but don't worry, we'll seal it with silicone to prevent leakage. Now here's where it gets exciting. Once your capacitor is charged, it stays charged. This opens up a world of possibilities. We'll add an iron or steel plate around the capacitor, but remember, handle it carefully so you don't accidentally discharge it. Wrap wire around the outside of the capacitor. This will be your electromagnetic field coil, and it's going to be powered by a battery. Using a 555 chip and a MOSFET, we'll create a circuit that switches this field on and off rapidly. What's the purpose of this setup? Well, as we pulse the electromagnetic field, we're tapping into the stored energy within the capacitor. This is how we begin to harness real, usable energy. And this is just the start. Tesla may not have had time to tell us, but this configuration could be the key to unlocking wireless power in ways we've never imagined. So, let's get into the details of how this all works. Let's dive deep into the theory behind the design we're calling the true flux capacitor. We're using a Leyden jar, essentially a capacitor in this context, and wrapping it with wire to act as the dielectric, along with Tesla's antenna setup, which catches electromagnetic spikes. The flux capacitor gets its name from combining two key concepts: magnetic flux and the traditional capacitor design of the Leyden jar. So why call it the flux capacitor? Because this setup directly involves magnetic flux. Those invisible lines of force created by a magnetic field interacting with the static voltage stored in the Leyden jar capacitor. The capacitor, wrapped in layers of aluminum and plastic, holds the charge, while the antenna catches those spikes generated by the pulsing magnetic field. These spikes can produce voltage, and in Tesla's theory, they can be amplified through resonance and oscillation. Now, it's important to understand that this setup isn't designed to run anything directly. This is our battery, so to speak. The focus is on capturing and amplifying energy, not yet on powering a load. The capacitor holds the voltage in place, and by using a 555 timer and MOSFET to create oscillations, we induce fluctuations in the magnetic field, which interact with the stored energy in the capacitor. The idea is that through these controlled oscillations, the system can produce small voltage spikes that, under the right conditions, could grow larger with resonance. Scientifically speaking, the theory holds up. In a resonant LC circuit, where a capacitor is paired with an inductor, like our coil, energy oscillates between the electric field of the capacitor and the magnetic field of the inductor. By controlling the frequency of these oscillations with a 555 timer, we aim to reach a point of resonance, where constructive interference could lead to higher voltage and current spikes. Tesla's work with high-frequency alternating currents suggested that by vibrating the charge at high frequencies, you could create spikes in voltage and potentially current. To ensure this system works, you must focus on the relationship between the capacitor and the coil. The energy isn't coming from nowhere. Rather, it's the stored energy in the capacitor being redistributed through the magnetic field and back, creating these fluctuations. By keeping the capacitor charged, we can continually pulse the system without needing to recharge it frequently. Voltage remains static unless acted upon by current. So as we move forward with this experiment, remember, we're building a foundation based on Tesla's principles, capturing and amplifying energy in ways that traditional electrical engineering often overlooks. With the Leyden jar acting as our flux capacitor and the oscillating magnetic field driving the system, we are taking a step closer to understanding and harnessing the wireless energy Tesla so passionately believed in. So now that we understand the principles at play, let's talk about what Nikola Tesla was really aiming for. He famously used his antenna to capture the charge from the ionosphere, essentially tapping into static electricity from the atmosphere. But what was he going to do with that stored charge? This is the mystery we've been trying to unravel for years. Tesla left us clues in his other patents, and one of those clues led us to the Leyden jar, a device that stores true power. The question is, how do you harness it? The answer lies in frequency and vibration. We've discovered that it doesn't take a lot of energy to induce vibration or frequency into a system, and once you start doing that, the amperage begins to flow. But here's the critical insight. Could we take this power directly? Yes, we could, but that would be a mistake. The real breakthrough comes from taking it wirelessly, keeping the voltage, the P in power, locked inside the system. Once you start to see this, the regular terms we use in electrical engineering get turned upside down. We're no longer talking about traditional power systems where you have to draw both voltage and amperage from a source. Instead, we're dealing with a form of power that's all around us but invisible. Wireless power. This is what Tesla was talking about over a century ago. And if this theory holds water, it has the potential to rewrite history. Tesla's idea was that you could create power not by consuming it from a source, but by vibrating the stored charge, just like how a small oscillation in water creates ripples. Those ripples, those waves, are your power. But instead of letting the energy dissipate, you keep it circulating wirelessly through the system. The voltage stays stored, and what we're drawing off are the energy spikes caused by electromagnetic flux, waves created by the interaction between the stored charge and the magnetic field. And this changes everything. We're no longer bound by the limitations of conventional power sources. We're working in a new realm, a realm of wireless power, and Tesla was right. Once you understand how to harness it, the possibilities are endless. This could be the key to the future of energy. A future that Tesla glimpsed but never fully realized in his time. As we conclude this journey into the depths of Nikola Tesla's work and the groundbreaking ideas that stem from it, let's reflect on the discoveries we've made. This isn't just about revisiting Tesla's theories, it's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible, reshaping how we understand energy itself, and uncovering the hidden potential in concepts that have been left unexplored for far too long. Tesla's antenna was designed to capture the charge from the ionosphere, essentially pulling down a static, untapped source of energy that the Earth naturally provides. This is a key insight. Tesla wasn't just trying to capture atmospheric charge for its own sake. He was laying the groundwork for a system that could take that charge and turn it into something far more powerful. The real question, however, has always been, what did Tesla plan to do with that charge? How could it be harnessed? This is where our exploration of the Leyden jar, a centuries-old capacitor design, comes into play. The Leyden jar, in our configuration, acts as a storage system for the static charge we collect. But storing charge isn't enough. We need to move it, harness it, and convert it into usable energy. And that's exactly what happens when we introduce the magnetic field into the system. The magnetic field, in this setup, plays the role of the catalyst. Even with minimal power input, using very thin wires and low amperage, the magnetic field begins to oscillate, generating movement within the stored charge. Think of it like the ripples in water. Whether you drop a small pebble or a large one, you create waves. These waves are the oscillations, the dynamic energy that can be harnessed. The key is that the magnetic field doesn't deplete the charge itself. It merely makes it move, transforming static potential into dynamic energy. This is where our innovation comes into play. creating what we call the flux capacitor, a new type of battery. The Leyden jar holds the charge, and the antenna sandwiched within the system captures the interactions between the charge and the magnetic field. The result, usable electricity generated not by constantly draining the system, but by keeping the voltage locked inside and extracting energy from the magnetic flux. The power stored in the system remains, while the magnetic field draws out bursts of energy whenever needed, much like tapping into a reservoir that never fully empties. What we've discovered here is that Tesla was likely right all along. He understood that the Earth's magnetic field, along with the natural oscillations of the planet, could serve as a source of infinite energy if we learned how to tap into it. By using the charge from the atmosphere and forcing it to interact with the Earth's magnetic field, we create movement in those charges, essentially waking up a dormant energy source. And here's the most exciting part. This system can be scaled. Just like traditional capacitors or batteries, these flux capacitors can be connected in series or parallel, allowing us to increase the voltage or the current, depending on the configuration. We're not talking about a theoretical system. We're talking about a practical way to generate and store power. By connecting multiple units together, we can achieve a significant and scalable source of energy that could potentially power homes, devices, or even entire grids. The implications are staggering. We've shown that this system works without breaking the laws of physics. Instead, we're pushing the boundaries of how we apply them. The interaction between stored charge and magnetic fields isn't new, but the way we've harnessed it is. And as we've discussed, this system doesn't rely on constant energy input. The magnetic field oscillations do the work of moving the charge, creating energy spikes that we can capture, while the charge itself remains stored potentially for hundreds of years. This leads us to the conclusion that Tesla's vision of wireless energy was not just theoretical, it was practical. He had the right idea: to use the magnetic forces of the Earth to oscillate the charge between the ionosphere and the ground, and to store that energy in a system where it could be tapped into at will. If this system stands up to further scrutiny, and all the evidence suggests that it will, we may have unlocked the key to sustainable wireless energy. We're not just talking about electricity drawn from conventional sources. We're talking about energy that's all around us, waiting to be harnessed. This isn't just a new way of thinking, it's a new way of powering the future. A future where energy is drawn from the environment, stored for long periods and released when needed. A future where Tesla's dream of wireless power becomes a reality, not just for experiments or small-scale tests, but for practical, everyday use. This is the potential that Tesla glimpsed, and now, over a century later, we may be on the verge of realizing it. So as we close, remember, the power isn't in what we take from the system, but in how we move the charge that's already there. This is the essence of Tesla's work and the key to unlocking a new era of energy. In conclusion, as we bring this episode to a close, it's time to connect all the dots and lay out the bigger picture. Because what we've been discussing isn't just theory, it's a potential breakthrough that could reshape our understanding of energy. Nikola Tesla was a visionary. He wasn't just trying to capture atmospheric energy, he was exploring how to turn the natural forces of the Earth into usable power. We've seen how Tesla's antenna could draw static charge from the ionosphere, and by using the Earth's magnetic field, he sought to move that charge, harnessing it in ways that traditional science had overlooked. But what was Tesla really building? We think we've stumbled upon part of the answer. The key lies in understanding how we store and manipulate energy. The Leyden jar, an ancient capacitor, holds the voltage we need, pre-charged and stable, waiting for movement. The antenna, sandwiched between layers of dielectric material, is the conduit through which we access that stored charge. But this system isn't static. The real magic happens when we introduce a magnetic field, even with minimal energy input, just enough to generate a weak magnetic field. We create the force necessary to push and pull the stored charge. This is the pivotal moment where static energy becomes dynamic. Think of it like a water wheel. The water, or charge, is already there, stored and ready, but the magnetic field is what sets it in motion. This motion creates oscillations, which are like ripples in a pond, small disturbances that travel outward. And just like with those ripples, we can harness this movement. Even without perfect resonance, we're tapping into the energy spikes created by these interactions, effectively transforming stored voltage into usable electrical energy. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Once we have this system in motion, it doesn't behave like a regular battery or capacitor. Instead, it functions more like a flux capacitor, a new kind of energy storage device. We're not continuously depleting the stored charge. Rather, we're using the magnetic field to extract energy from it without draining it entirely. The charge remains in the system, locked in place, while the magnetic field does the work of creating the spikes of energy we need. This changes everything. If we can stack multiple Leyden jars or capacitors together, connecting them in series or parallel, just like a battery, we're scaling up the power. The system generates usable energy in bursts, but the original charge stays put, available for future use. And because the system relies on the natural forces of magnetism and electrical potential, we could theoretically harness this energy for extended periods of time, potentially even years, without needing to recharge the system. So does this theory hold up under scrutiny? Absolutely. It aligns with what we know about electromagnetism, capacitance, and energy conservation. We know that magnetic fields can move charge, and we know that capacitors can hold energy for long durations. By combining these elements, we're effectively creating a system that challenges the conventional notions of power generation. We're not drawing on a continuous energy supply like a typical battery. We're leveraging the power that's already there, stored and waiting to be tapped. What Tesla envisioned was more than just harnessing energy from the air. He was working towards a future where we could draw power from the forces around us, wirelessly, efficiently, and in ways that traditional systems couldn't even begin to approach. And now we're taking that vision and adding modern insight, showing that his ideas were not only feasible but potentially world-changing. This is the future of energy, one where we harness the natural forces of the earth to create power on demand. We've gone through the science, the theory, and the application, and what we're left with is a profound realization. Tesla was right. The key to unlocking limitless power might not be in building bigger, more complex machines, but in understanding the subtle forces that already surround us. The journey to rediscover and apply Tesla's principles isn't just an exercise in history, it's a step towards the energy systems of tomorrow. So what's next? It's time to experiment, to build, and to explore these concepts further. Because if this theory continues to hold water, then the potential for a new era of energy is closer than we ever thought.